Yeah.
We're going to be talking about Riker tonight because he's awesome and everybody should get him.
Yeah, I wish I had him.
I
Yeah,
only have
me
17.
too.
So
But apparently when you're over level 40, we're not supposed to get officers.
I just got him today.
According to Scopely.
So, I mean, guys, we want to talk about Armadas. Like, that's an ongoing topic. And how to read these battle reports. A lot of people have questions about that. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Where do you want to start?
Well, since Yar's here, Yar's a master of reading these battle logs. So he's going to be talking about some of the things he was reading with today's logs on Riker that I was using in a bunch of Armadas today after I unlocked them. And
I was reading the one that you brought your jelly to, and he was really doing some damage. Like the longer the Armada went, the better it got. And the jelly has that stacking ability also, but it kind of added to it. But I'll let Yar explain it.
Yeah, so when I was looking at it, I do wonder how much the synergy is actually doing for you. It's hard to tell with the jelly because it does have that ship ability. But I've looked at a couple other battle logs people posted on things like Saladins and Enterprises, and I think that we might be better off doing Riker with something like 6 and Khan, because that extra 40% you got from the synergy cook, I think you'd get more out of getting more of that damage to the hull and more of your hits as crits. But I need to look a little more closely at that.
Thanks. Yes, I did hear some stuff today about using Khan and 6 with Riker. I did just post those battle log from one of my the screenshots from one of the earlier battles with the full synergy. I still need to do that Riker 6 Khan combo.
Hey, that was my Armada.
And how is he working does he work well with hostile grinds or PvP? Or is he strictly an Armada officer?
No, he's a PvE officer as well. I was using him today for the hunt the Federation faction hunt, and mainly because I got the extra 3 points. It's not the same as using Pike Moro Chen, but I did see a significant bonus using him with Beverly and Chen.
Is he the same team or whatever as Picard, right? Just TNG crew?
Yeah, but I don't have Picard.
Does anybody have Picard?
Nope.
I think Mistaken does, but he can't do voice tonight.
Okay.
Welcome, Tiger.
It'd be nice to have somebody that has Picard. You can see how they work together.
Got about 23 shards and then I'll have him, but I'm still a little short.
I have 93.
I have 91.
You guys probably all have more than me.
Yeah, Danny's in a good bracket. Like she gets a lot of perks for being in that bracket. You should probably stay there.
I might. Well, Mistaken says, as more and more players obtain Riker, I think it's important to know ways in which to use him effectively. Currently, I really feel this is the best use for him. While pairing him with Beverly Crusher for synergy would produce greater damage, most of that would be mitigated by the Armada. As you can see in the first log screenshot, but pairing him with 6 of 10 causes the level of the Armada's mitigation to lower, and more damage from your shot gets through the shields in the hulls. Think of it as spray and pray versus sniper. One may be throwing a lot of rounds down range, but the other is actually going to take the critical shot.
That's why I preach penetration over damage. Penetration over damage. They're both really good, but penetration makes your damage go further.
He had 44% mitigation in round 2, 22% mitigation in 8, and 19% mitigation in round 16.
Now, one thing I did hear today was that the Riker setup for Armadas works much better with normal space Armadas versus deep space Armadas, because deep space Armadas, you really want to stick with that mitigation.
They've also, I don't know what they've done with the numbers in deep space, but it seems if you don't have a 4-star ship, anything but 4-star ships just seem to get killed really fast. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's a numbers thing or if they've purposely made a weakness for non 4-star ships. I don't know.
Nerfed people.
Yeah, it just kind of feels that way because anytime I see somebody come in with something, or like if I've even just for fun tried to use 3-star ships myself and they just get killed really quick, or don't do any damage at all, even with like crews. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that, but
I think you're probably the only one in this room that actually has a lot of experience with deep space Armadas. We have a lot of experience dying to them, though.
fair enough.
My guys do have some experience, but they haven't said anything to me yet.
Give it a little time.
Maybe that's part of it, though, because you're taking a bunch of 3-star epics up there, and then it's just killing you over and over again. Maybe that's part of that nerf situation.
Well, that's what we're saying. You can't really use them. Because one thing with G4 ships versus G3 ships is G4 ships fire off a lot more rounds and have more guns.
Right.
Like a D4 only has, one gun, and it shoots twice a round.
I think the biggest difference you're seeing there between the G4s and the G3s is just where your mitigation and penetration caps are at. Like if Handy were to pull up, something on a say a Valdor or a Newton, your penetration comparison to the G4 Armada's defense, even if you're following triangle like we showed in our Biggs channel in there, the defensive values for that Armada are so high across the board that even the ships that seem like they would have a disadvantage, your penetration is still so far below what its base numbers are that G3 ship, it never gets enough beef behind it. Especially if I'm hearing that somebody at level 50 like Handy is cannot take a G3 ship into that Armada and have success even with light crews. I think it just comes down to where the G4 ships start with those values versus where the G3 ships kind of top out.
It's just really interesting though, because people that are level 50 with all the research and whatnot they've done, and it's almost like a lot of the research is not affecting the 3-star ships and it's only affecting the 4-star ships. So I think that might also weigh into it. Maybe.
Well,
That wouldn't
stinks.
surprise me. I seem to find a lot of spots where research is very particular about what it actually applies to. Like it doesn't seem to give some
But it
of the
doesn't.
jumps that you would expect.
Right, and
But
they don't tell you what it works on sometimes.
Yeah. There's so little transparency behind a lot of the math that it's tough to figure out.
I really wish Scopely would release more information on the research and how it actually affects things,
Yeah, something a little more clear.
Yeah, their descriptions are awful.
And that's when the descriptions are actually accurate.
Right. Half the time it's broken.
You gotta love Scopely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to.
But another
we're all
interesting.
still here.
I know, right? Another interesting thing is I've seen people taking stuff like a Saladin. Like one thing we've been doing is messing around with Saladins, and they're around like 2 million for like a level 50 or something like that, and they're taking them and taking out 4.5 million enterprises and stuff like that with just a little Saladin.
Ooh, that's good to know.
Yes. Smooth put his Saladin and I think his hijack D3 out there, and it's just obnoxiously large.
Yeah.
So I found this. I was listening to DJ's podcast, and somebody had posted this tool, this mitigation tool. I put a link in the chat, but I haven't messed around with it yet. But I'd like to see if there's a way to utilize this to help people with crewing up. Because it gives you an idea of how your mitigation works versus, like, you set it up to like where it's you against an armada, let's say, and it just gives you a mitigation percentage. But I have not done anything with it at all. Like, but I did post it in there so you guys can check it out.
That's a lot of math.
Yeah, it goes into logarithms and stuff. It's
Yeah,
a little
I think the right
deeper
answer to
than
that is
most
to
people.
throw it at Darius. Here's a new toy for Darius. Let him play with that for a little bit and get some feedback. I think that's a way easier method.
Quirky zombie.
Another thing I've really noticed is there's a lot of people out there that aren't paying close enough attention to their crews, even still. I mean, I've even seen people in Nona where you'd think that, they've probably been around the game long enough and they're running PMC and stuff on armadas during events because they're spread across, their officers are spread across, 5 ships or whatever.
Now, have you talked to them about just switching that to PMG to get rid of the criticals?
That's a very good idea, and I'll probably start mentioning that. Now I know a lot of people will, have one of their guys do that in an armada to help everybody else out.
It's kind of like the sacrificial ship, but it does so much for the win, because that's the idea.
Which is usually as smaller players.
Yeah, it's usually a way for the smallest ship to get into the armada.
And help out.
I'm running PMG so that they get the star if you're running a power only thing. That goes into armada etiquette of, making sure that you are in an appropriately sized armada for your power level.
Right.
So many people try and get into armadas that are bigger than they can handle. And if too many of those, one person going in there with PMG to support, that helps. Too many people going in there who can't help, they'll end up hurting it for the team, and they need to understand, their power level. One thing that we've done in Dead is we have put everyone in brackets by their ops level, so that they can group up in armadas and talk to each other and team up to make sure that they're all helping each other out. Another thing is that came up recently is damaged armadas. There's no, right now the current, practice is to just wait a couple minutes and see if anyone comes back to a damaged armada. But I say, with the spawn times the way they are, and with powers the way that they are, don't touch damaged armada, period. There's no reason to. Just ignore them. Move on, find another one.
I say that would work unless it's one of those events where you can't find armadas, or like, for example, mudmadas.
Yeah, that's where most of this stuff happens.
Yeah, but they're so competitive that a lot of times you may not ever get one in a particular system at all if you don't really go for it.
Well, I get that during an event, but when there's no event going, it's just a normal day. There's tons of armadas around.
Oh, of course, yeah. Normal day, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yesterday, for instance, I had 2 or 3
Before you
incidents.
get too far into that, Kick, I want to jump backwards a little bit.
Go ahead.
the comment about splitting everybody into ops groups for the players in Dead that are listening, you guys have a tag that's available for those ops groups through Discord. And if you don't know this, this is how the 35 and over crowd in Dead handles this. If I don't know, who's online, or I don't know if I necessarily have enough strength, but I'm worried about, let's say, no offense, guys, Nona or Dark or somebody like that jumping in on a big armada that I want to go hit, I will throw that armada and then I will go straight to Discord and I will ping my ops level team. So for us, it's like at 35 over. I will go straight into that Discord channel, ping every 35 plus player we have on Discord and say, hey, I got a 6-seater fly-in Groombridge. It's an epic. Get your asses here. That will let everybody that's level appropriate with the right ships and everything know that, hey, there's an armada that you should come get into if you're available. That way you don't have to sit there and wait, watch the armada target that you want get grabbed by another team, or end up coming up short because there's not enough people that are online. This is a way for you guys to jump in and go, hey, I know that I've got this rare. I want to go hit a 12 million target, and I don't want the big guys getting in the way and stealing all the rewards or whatever. I'm
That
going to ping my
actually
guys.
is. That's a really good idea.
And that's just something to kind of keep everything, keep the scaling right. Because while it's nice as a lower ops player to go hit a big armada, your rewards are based on the damage that you do. So if you're going in there with a whole bunch of heavies and you're running in a Saladin and everybody else has augers, you're still going to get a decent cut from the larger armada, but in the long run, you're still kind of cutting yourself short. And this also helps the players in your range grow instead of always having the same players showing up to the armadas and getting the rewards, which ends up helping everybody in the alliance that's following that method. So if you guys aren't aware that's there, please do use it. It's of great benefit to you and the teammates that are at a similar ops level for you.
Yeah, so everybody's split up like this: 25 to 29 range, 30 to 34 range, and 35 and over.
Don't forget
So
the
you
dead
can go
links.
in and ping your group from 30. If you're 31, go in and write at 30 to 34, and then you can ping your group and people in your power level, and run an armada where the big guys aren't allowed in. It's just this for the smaller guys, and that way it maxes your rewards and then helps you guys grow.
Who you calling small?
I'm not a big guy at all. He can call me small. That's fine.
We're all small
I'm
compared
barely
to
adult
Handy.
size.
Yeah.
I mean, physically, I'm barely adult sized. I can't help it. I need to hang out with Kirk or something.
Just remember though to still call out in Alliance chat if you are coming in. Don't just call out on Discord, because some people don't look on Discord after they do that.
As we've seen
Yeah,
multiple times.
I called Cook out on that earlier in a private voice there, and I'm going to do it here publicly too. If I go in there and I ping you guys 35 and over crowd, and I say, hey, I need people for a epic or a rare or whatever, you answer me on Discord. 100% promise you, I did not see it. I made the ping, I closed Discord, I went back to active chat. That's just the way I see it. It's too much to ask for people to pay attention to callouts on Discord and in-game chat. So just get your button in-game chat and throw it up in there. If you're coming, say it in there. Don't expect me to go back and forth to Discord. I could barely pay attention as it is, man.
And then one quick thing to add there, Cook and Tiger both said it. Don't let us big players steal your rewards either. If we say we're there for support and you get a bunch of people in your bracket, and if you're sure you can win it, or ask one of us if you can win it, bump us out if we've said support. We're there to make sure you don't lose, not to steal your rewards. So, my auger or Cook's jelly is sitting there, and we said we're there for support, but you've got all the power you need. Please bump us out. Don't just include us and let us steal those rewards.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that is what that means. Like, we really do mean that. Like, just don't start sin.
I've noticed a lot of people do that.
Say support is the short way of saying, please kick me if you can. I just don't want you to waste your directives.
Exactly. And also pay attention, because there's a lot of glitches there that sometimes it doesn't show you that the armada, that you're still in the armada, and make sure you're still in that armada or that it's finished before you move on.
Yeah, that's happened to me quite a bit lately.
Yeah, we lost an Armada today because I wasn't paying attention. We all make
Mm.
mistakes.
You left before it was over?
Yeah, they died.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I tell our alliance if you join an Armada, you're not allowed to leave. Period. Because a lot of times people are starring different players. They're seeing what combination gets them the power they need. They're looking at the ships. They may be trying to figure out who they want to star, who they don't, and maybe they misclicked and starred somebody that they didn't mean to. You just never know. So if you join, stay in it
Yeah, that
and
happened to me today.
wait till the completion, because you never know what the person running it is thinking. They started it. It's their mats that started it. They're in control of it, and you might as well stay in it because they might decide they want you in or whatever.
That also goes to don't call out if you're not going to show up. Because a lot of times we'll say full, and then other players don't come. But then somebody decides, oh, I don't want to go to yours. I want to go to this rare, or I want to go to this epic. And we end up short a player. So you always need to make sure that if you call out, you show up.
Well, I would recommend to any alliances, don't just wait for people to call out and consider those people there and in when all they're doing is saying on my way in AC. I would wait till they get there and make sure you have the power you need and all that. I mean, if it's a sure win Armada, I guess that's different, but I wouldn't run it as first come first serve. I would first and foremost always go for the win. Once you have the win, try and get some lower levels in or etc.
Yeah,
Is
I
what
mean,
I would personally recommend.
well, part about Armada etiquette is depending on it's up to whoever runs it. If they want to say, they have to say if they're going with power over callouts. If they're going with power, then it's whoever shows up with the most power, no stars needed.
So you call it out?
Yeah, we'll do callouts if we say if we don't say power. But if we see that there's not enough power, then we'll say we need some bigger guns or something.
Which also means that whoever's running the Armada has got to be paying attention to what's showing up.
Exactly.
Which isn't always easy.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Not
And
with work life.
we know it's a tough thing, like to get bumped from an Armada, but just remember, the goal is to win, so that the leader has to make sure that happens. It doesn't always happen, but these directives are scarce. Like, to run an epic costs $50 if you want to buy it in the store. So some people are buying these packs, so don't get upset if you get bumped. I get bumped all the time because I'm kind of the low man on the 35 over. I've got the weakest ships, so I get bumped sometimes. I know what it's like. It's not fun.
It's okay. Handy's getting used to it.
I'm used to getting bumped.
But Handy's getting used to it now too.
It did finally happen to me. I haven't been bumped in like a year. It finally happened. But since Grazi left, it hasn't happened again.
Yeah.
You're back up in the highest bracket.
Yeah, just barely. Which is amazing. A level 50, and I'm just barely in some of these Armadas.
I mean, it's good that they started doing those deep space Armadas, though, because you guys are kind of maxed out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we only had up to level 39s, it was just ridiculous. Like, our entire alliance was trying to go for... I mean, it got to the point where literally if you were over level 40, like, you were never getting in any epics because we were trying to give them all the people that were going for the jelly, because that was a good way to get jelly blueprints, is the 39 epics.
Yes. Very good way.
So we did something called Jelly Hunters, and we would just call them Jelly Hunters, and essentially the 39 epics, we would just let people with the 3-star epic ships would be the only ones in those. Provided that there's enough online and whatnot. And, we would send a few bigger ships for support if somebody needed it, but it was common knowledge that you always star those ships out if you have the power, just like you guys were saying. But yeah, so yeah, now that the deep space is out, finally there's something for us big guys to go for, which is great.
Yeah, in
Andy, are
between.
you guys beating the biggest ones yet?
Yeah, we do, but like we can one-shot level 48s, but the level 50s, the uncommon we can one-shot. The rare takes 2 shots. The epics usually take like 4 shots for a level 50.
So are all your buildings just maxed out? Like you're just like you can't build anything anymore? It's just all research?
Me personally, no.
Yeah.
I did like the staples, right? Like the main buildings, but I haven't done my guns or my docks. I just did like, the normal stuff.
You didn't unlock that last dock yet?
What, the 6th dock?
The sixth
Yeah.
one.
Oh yeah, of course. You can get that at level 49, actually.
Oh, I thought that was
So
the thing.
I've had the 6th ship for a long time.
Nice. Did we want to go back to how to read battle log?
I did have one thing I would like to add to the Armada etiquette, if now's a good time.
Go
Hey,
ahead.
Sid.
Hey, how's it going? So I have a player. I won't name names, but he's kind of, I guess, a window licker, so to speak, in a nice way. But the one thing that irritates the crap out of me is when you have a 2.5 million power ship and you're calling 1.5 million power armadas, and then crewing them so poorly that you almost lose. It drives me absolutely bonkers. And then when we see it and we say, hey, okay, why don't you try this crew? This crew is better for armadas. And the only reply we get is, well, this crew works for me. And then it's like, well, no, because that armada tore your ship a new one, and it shouldn't have. And we're trying to give you advice. We're not trying to be jerks. We're trying to help you. We're trying to help everybody that comes to your armada.
You've
Please.
told them this?
Oh, yes, several times.
I don't know about you guys, but I would kick that person.
Yep.
Have a few nighttime players that they kind of just do their own thing. We'll say something like as far as how to crew your armada. They don't actually ask for help or need assistance. And they just go for the smaller armadas that they can solo themselves. And we've asked before if they want help or whatnot, and they're just silent. So we're just kind of like, okay, I guess you're just doing your own thing.
I guess it depends on the alliance, some alliances are a lot more accepting than others. So
yeah, it's become more problematic recently, and we're discussing
if it's hurting your other players, like they're losing an armada because of it or something, or people are not getting into an armada that could have helped a lot more, or those sort of situations, then I would highly recommend discussing removing the person or having a serious conversation with the person.
That makes more sense.
Or having a armada ban on them for a little while.
Well, right, he's not allowed in any of the other armadas because he crews so poorly that we don't want to risk the potential loss, especially on like a rare or the occasional epic. And he calls a spot, and then he shows up and we star him out. And then, he never complains about it, but it's just like, you don't let him in because he's going to have a junk crew. Like, I mean, he had today, for example, he had the uncommon or the normal Riker, and then he had a minor officer and Scotty or something, and he
I
showed up
think
to
I
an
know who
Armada,
you're talking about.
and we're like, "What the hell are you doing, dude? Like, you can't use any of those crew in Armadas. Like, they don't work." And he's like, "Well, this crew works for me." And we're like, "Well, no, it doesn't. Like,
Hey,
we're
tell me
trying to help
this
you, bro."
real quick. Is it a higher level player, like semi?
Mid-30s ish. Little, I think he's 36.
Okay, never mind. We actually had a
Yeah.
player, Nona, that literally was just like that. And we even had to kick him.
Yeah.
You know, I felt for him because I actually thought maybe he had mental issues, like genuinely.
Yeah.
And so like we carried him for a year, and I said, "I'm really sorry, man, but I just can't do it anymore. Like, you're affecting the other, other
Right.
players." I'm sorry.
You
Right.
know, like
So far, like,
one thing we found with guys that have a language barrier, and I don't know that this is the case at all with this guy, but like we've got some South American players and stuff here with us, and it was a while trying to teach those guys crews and everything. Before we had one of our players, Jarsis, posted his officer page, and we found out that some of the names don't even translate properly. So, like Bones, for example, the rare McCoy, the name in Portuguese did not translate to Bones. So when he's running stuff through Google Translate trying to figure out what we're talking about, he's completely lost because the name goes into something totally different. So I mean, if it's an
wow.
English speaking player, then I'd expect that that's probably not the problem. But just a little note to look out for. Apparently, the translations aren't really correct in some cases, and we've had to kind of simplify the language with a couple of our players, not because they can't understand, but because it just doesn't match up. So I have to say things like, Blue McCoy, or something like that to differentiate. Or name it by its rarity or something, because I give him a name
Or
and he's
take
like, wait, what?
screenshots
I don't have
of
that.
your officers and then
Exactly.
circle who you're talking about and send it to them on Discord.
Yeah, we
Yep.
did that too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I sometimes tell people just to copy what you see other people using if they aren't really into like studying crews and stuff like that. It's just run what this guy's running because it works.
Yeah,
If you got people that are like that.
yeah, so far, I mean, he's an English speaker. We're pretty certain of that. And we got some Google, or not Google, but we got translator bots in Discord. We've had some conversations with him, but I just think that he is stubborn. And so far, it hasn't negatively impacted anybody. That's why we just have been tolerating it. But the trend is getting worse and worse as he's calling more and more armadas. And usually some of us will show up to boost him to make sure that he's winning. But I mean, it's also getting to a point where we're getting frustrated at it. So we're having some conversations about what to do with him. But the whole point is, if somebody's trying to help you and like offer suggestions, don't like just totally but and just ignore the advice. Like, we're all in this together. We're all here to help each other. If I'm saying, hey, why don't you try this, this, and this versus what you're using, you might get better results. I'm not trying to be like a dick about it. I'm trying to ensure your success, especially as your leader. That's my goal. So the whole back to the etiquette part is, we're all in this together. If somebody's offering suggestions and advice, please take it. Like, I understand that some people have egos, but just take it that somebody's trying to help you.
Yeah, it's important to have an open mind when other experienced players are trying to give you advice. That's 100%. Like we're all here to be successful, and we're all here to help build each other up. I mean, it's the point of a top 20 alliance taking in smaller players in the first place. Is we're trying to help cultivate you. You know, we want you to be able to reach the places we're at. You know, we want to give you the benefit of our experience without the cost of our experience. You know, because some of us have been doing this for quite some time and have screwed up a bunch of different times and learned valuable lessons from that. And we're trying to give back to you guys and show you, hey, this is what we found after exhaustive experimentation. This is what works the best. This is what we've gleaned out of all of these attempts. So skip the hard part and go straight to the successful part. You know, don't take it personal. Don't let your ego get in the way. But you know, keep an open mind to that stuff. You know, I'm pretty solid on crews. I have a pretty good handle on what I'm doing. But occasionally, you know, somebody will throw something at me and go, hey, why don't you try this? And I actually, perfect example, Pirate Yar told me at one point to try TOS Kirk, TOS Uhura, and original Spock, Blue Spock on there, on my auger, to go take a shot at something at a larger jelly. And I was shocked at how successful it was, going PvP with my auger with no burning whatsoever, just flat out didn't care, just punch through the shields and be done with it. I was amazed at how well it worked. You know, and there's no chance, I admit this freely, no chance I ever would have tried that on my own, just by looking through my officer cards.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's good advice.
His mom still dresses him funny though, so not too bad.
I've got one
Very, very, very
little
true.
tidbit that I don't know that I've heard mentioned on here, but a lot, if you hear people talking about stacking your lower deck, and I think a lot of people just kind of gloss over this, right? Because if you put the right, like you can balance your lower deck so that your percentage of buffs to the ship will get your power level up, right? So that's 9 times out of 10, or not 9 times, let's say about 7 times out of 10, 70% of the time, that's the wrong way to go about it, just to make your ship power level a little bit higher. It's totally wrong. So what you really want to do is you want to look at the skills of your officers. Now, let's say, for example, your captain has a skill that says blah, 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 blah percentage based on health. Well, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to stack your lower deck with officers that are the highest in health. So now your health figure is going to be much higher, and that officer ability that you've focused your bridge crew around is going to be a lot more effective, and it makes a huge difference, like big difference. So you want to really, now if you're running a bridge crew that does not have a skill that specifically says something about strength or health or attack or whatever, then just go with balanced, right? Or try and max out your power. But if you do have a skill, or maybe 2 skills, then you want to make sure you use officers, like let's say you have a health skill and an attack skill, and let's say you have 5 spots on the lower deck. Maybe use 3 officers, your highest officers for attack, and your 2 highest officers for health. And in doing that and not going after that actual power number, you're going to be much more successful.
That's a great point, and I think it's important to note that whenever anybody gives you a crew suggestion, I think the vast majority of the time they're kind of assuming that players already know that, and so that's sometimes why a player that's not as experienced or isn't aware of that fact might not have the same success with that crew. But for example, if you're running 5-6 whoever in an armada, that 600% of health stat to mitigation that 5 gives you with synergy with 6 there. If you get all 3 of your stat categories to 300% and your health is only, let's say 10,000 as a total raw score, you're going to see, 600% of 10,000 60,000, 600,000, whatever the hell. Somebody math this. But you'll see that number in there. If you if you can stack 15K or 20K, even though your ship's power never increases and you never see anything go above 300% at that point, you're still stacking a whole lot more mitigation once the combat starts based off of that ability.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why your higher tier ships are so successful. It's not just because the higher tier ship is like, ooh, wow, look at me, my raw stats are so much more amazing at T8 than T6. No, that's the fact that I get 2 more officers on the back end, and now I can put 35K in health on my Gladius and throw Charvanic up on the bridge, and at 2.9 I can go wreck 4.4 augers. It's
Which
because
is
I have
another consideration in picking a ship too. Like you may have a ship that's new, like a jelly, and you only have 1 lower deck spot. Well, your epics that are maxed are still going to be a lot more effective.
Yes.
All about
With at least with officer skills like that.
It's also
Translating that
important
to dead size ships, that means your T2 Burrell might do less well than your Max Sally.
Exactly, because that's what happens with me.
Yeah,
A lot of
don't
you guys
send
may have seen me.
your brand new
Just-
ship that you got that's tier
Yeah.
1 to an
Just
Armada.
don't ever let that. Basically, don't ever let that power number be anything you look at, because a lot of times it's not important.
True.
I've breached in our alliance chat a number of times. I don't think any ship is really that ship's power, what you're expecting it to be, until you get it to about T6, which seems to be on most ships where that backline spot number 4 shows up. Once you can get 4 officers on the back line, that's usually when a ship really seems to hit its stride. If your officers are real fleshed out, you can do it with 3. But as I've gone up at the 26, 28, 32, and 34 faction ships, each one of them, I wasn't really impressed with them, was kind of underwhelmed until I got that 4th officer slot. And then all of a sudden I could just go and do what I expected to be able to do with that ship. So that's a great point, because those T2, T3, they're not going to be as mean as you think they are. You really got to get some of those stats up from the back line, and then you can really do a lot of things with them.
Yeah, like my Augur's only tier 5, so I've only got 3 officers on the bottom, and I struggle with getting that, what I need, what Andy was just talking about. Like I have to shuffle through all these officers, and I'm really struggling to get my defense up or whatever it is I'm trying to get. I can barely hit 300 on 1. I can hit 270 across the board, but I can't get those attack, defense, and health bonuses up to 300%.
And that's not important if you're like if you have a specific crew that's using one of those skills that it's really overpowered, right? If it's super OP, then just focus on that and don't worry about your ship power. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
More often than not, in like every way in this game, shown power is a lie. It doesn't mean as much as you think it does. Whether it's ship power or different things like that. I mean, as your ops level goes up, your shown player power will fluctuate based on what ships you have on dock. So definitely don't ever think that the pure power rating that you see is really the stat you're going for. Because again, I have ships that'll give up $1 million, 1.5 million. But if I'm hitting within the triangle with the right crew, it's no problem. I have half of my ship left when I'm done with that fight. Even though that augur is spotting my Gladius 1.5 million, he still dies screaming and I'm still giggling in AC. So don't worry about the power too much.
We have one guy, his ship's 200K less powered than some of the other guys. But the way he combos his officers or gets them working together, they hit harder in Armadas. And some other people will go, well, why'd you star him in? He's not that strong. And it's like, well, it's not the power number. It's that he can get it done.
Yeah.
There's your segue into battle reports right there.
Also, with Armadas, having just a balanced mixture of crews is really important too. I know our alliance, Nona, struggles with that, on a regular basis, because typically we just have so much power to throw at an armada, it just doesn't really matter. So I think that's maybe an issue with us more than a lot of people. But if you don't have balanced crews and different types of ships for regular armadas and whatnot, you end up getting people just copying crews. And then soon enough, you've got an armada and everybody's running the same crew, and you fail because
When
you
we
got,
swing higher than our comfort level for our alliance, that's when I make sure everyone plans out their crews ahead of time and who's going. But then usually it's a fixed group as well.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's where you see that the most is where when you're swinging at whatever the top level of your reach is, when your top players are kind of pressing a little bit, that's when it really makes a difference. But it
Right.
is good to
When the
practice that
rubber
early
hits the
on
road.
too. Yeah, but I mean, there's times where okay, you go to the go fire off some exchange armadas, and everybody can get away with running 5 Kirk Spock, and that's it's whatever, it's fine. But you take some of those same players and go up against some of the high level epics or high level rares, and it's much more beneficial to go, okay, somebody call out and bring a hull breach crew, because that's going to give us the background damage bonus to all of our criticals. Somebody make sure that, or 2 ships make sure you're running burning, because I know I have 4 augers showing up, and that frees up the other 2 auger players to do some kind of a hybrid crew or something that's faction specific to increase their damage without having to give a bridge spot to burning, because somebody else already has that covered. And in case somebody out there listening doesn't know this, any of those background effects like that, your whole armada crew will see them. So if I have 4 augers in a party and one guy triggers burning, all 4 augers get that burning for their ship ability. Doesn't matter that they didn't generate it, as long as it's the target is burning, you're good to go. So running, a 5-seat armada with 5 augers in it, you don't need 5 guys running burning there. You're actually limiting yourself because you have too much redundancy. 2 guys running it, that kind of makes sense to me, because you're hedging your bets. But beyond 2 people, if you have that many burning dependent ships in the armada, have a couple of people, somebody throw Lorca on there so you can get hull breach for everybody. Or something along those lines. Run some damage ramp or run some extra penetration, because you don't need to dedicate to burn.
Well, even for people that, like, for example, let's say most of your players are 30 to level 40, and your group of, let's say, 30 to 35 players is running smaller armadas. Well, they could probably go up a power level if they just coordinated their efforts, and get more loot for the whole team.
That's a very good point.
Which also in turn is going to help everybody grow faster. So, I'd love nothing more than to help the whole server grow as quickly as possible, so I have more people to play with. It's always been one of my goals.
Yeah.
So, and I think as a whole, our server's done extremely well with that.
I guess
we can
you should
always
have
do
grown up
better.
so much.
What's that?
I guess you shouldn't have grown to the top so fast, so you could still play with the rest of us younglings.
I know, I just can't help it. I see that shiny button and I just got to click it.
I hate green
Overachievers.
arrows. I feel you. Those green
I
arrows
guess
make
the
me
takeaway
angry.
from this, the officer variety is the spice of life, including your officer combos with all the different ships in your armadas.
Which is a great way to move into. I know Josh wanted to talk about crews for the armadas. A few different options.
Well, I wanted to talk about crews, yes. We have a channel here on our Discord all about helpful crew loadouts. Of course, it's gotten a little outdated because, we haven't uploaded a lot of new stuff lately, although we're constantly getting new stuff here. I mean, the last thing we uploaded was TOS officers.
I would suggest even giving people a list of basically 5 and 6 man teams, a list of what ship and what officers to put on those ships. So basically create fire teams for yourself. And then just all you have to do is decide which person's getting number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 based on what ships they have available and officers they have available. And you can just have kind of preset crews, to help people. Just they pick a loadout and load it up and go. And then they'll be more successful with Armadas. That might be an easy way to do it.
That is a
And
good idea.
especially for the players that don't have as much experience, or your lower ops teams that haven't been on as many. That's something that they could quick reference and go, okay, hey, I'm bringing Fire Team 2, or something along those lines. That would
Right.
probably help
And that
speed
would
their
be
process up a lot.
Yeah, and like Fire Team 2 be Augur with the burning crew. And then, number 3 is third ship is Enterprise with the blah blah or whatever. But I think that might be kind of neat if you had people interested in setting that up.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's something we'll work on. Thank you.
And something that you said earlier too about what ships work best against which faction.
Yeah, that's also important.
Yeah, that's
It's almost a
something
battle triangle in of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that's an issue, I think, with us that we've discussed is when everyone started playing the game, I'm pretty sure everyone started playing with the eyes on the Enterprise. And at the time, the Enterprise was the best ship, before G4 even came out.
False.
Best ship.
Augur.
It changed into the Augur once they started fixing it and making it better.
Yeah.
And so it's all like Romulan ships are the best ships from like Augur on. Screw the Gladius. That thing's a piece of junk.
Ha!
You just hurt
You
Tiger's
have one
feelings.
ship that can kill it. The Star Empire does not approve.
Klingon's pretty strong too. In the over 40.
Yeah. So, but what I'm getting at is, I think when a lot of us started hitting the epic ships levels at the forefront in Den and some of the other alliances now too, that we put a lot of emphasis on the Augur, looking at its ability to kill all the enterprises that preceded us, and the fact that it is a lean, green, mean, hostile hunting
Killing machine.
Yeah.
But god darn it, it's slow.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so slow.
But that's why
That is why I like my Gladius for grinding hostile.
And sometimes I have very much so noticed this. I use my Kelvin for hostile grinding just because, especially if you're going to those systems where the hostiles are much more spread out. Like, because some systems have an abundance of hostiles, some systems are a lot more thin. And if you're in a system that, you got to take that into account. The speed of your ship absolutely dictates how quickly you'll get points. So when you're grinding, I suggest to people is test it. So set a 30-second timer, a minute or whatever, and just sit there and grind. Take a screenshot of your rep and grind for a minute with one ship. Take a screenshot when you're done after that minute. Do it again. And you're also including, any travel time, any repairs with travel time, if you have to, you know what I mean? Take all that into account, and sometimes you'll be surprised that even if you're picking a ship that's much faster, but maybe you have to repair more. If you're grinding somewhere or you have your base close to that spot, it might still get you rep a lot faster, even though it doesn't last as long. So that's something each person should test from time to time and see what gets you the best rep the fastest.
The other part I want to piggyback on that is player density in those systems, right? Because everybody knows that there's a couple of systems at each rep level that the majority of players are going to do their hostile kills. I love my Augur, but because it is so damn slow, you will never catch me grinding hostiles with my Augur in those systems, especially during events, because there's so much competition for those hostiles, even if it is a densely packed system, because a lot of players are going to be there. So when I roll up and I see, oh, wow, there's, 4 or 5 Augurs already grinding in this space. Well, it's Gladius time, kids. And, because that way I'm not getting, in these turtle races to try and get to the last hostile, I can get to the ones that I need, and then get out of there because there's so many players in the area grinding. This is something I do, especially during events.
100%
Well,
true.
like Taiga Core, for example, if you're in there, I've actually timed it out there back in the day, and it was much faster for me to just hit whatever was closest than to try and go hit a level 40 or the level 39s. So I could just sit there and just like repeatedly 38, 38, 38, 39, 40, 38, 38, 38, 38, 38. And I would get rep a lot faster that way than trying to just hunt down the 39 and 40s.
Oh, that's valid for the events too, because when you're hostile grinding for events, watching players like scream all over the map to just hit the highest level hostiles, I outscore those dudes like crazy because I'm not selective at that point. If you're hunting specific level hostiles, also just as a side note for those that don't know this, if you are only hunting 40s, every time you hit and kill a 40 in, say, a 39 system, what goes into the queue next for the hostile level is a 38. So it scales. You hit 38s to free up the 39s. You hit 39s to free up the 40s. If you roll into a system and it's nothing but 38s and you need 39s and 40s, don't be afraid to go wipe, a dozen or 16 of the 38s to get those things out of your way and get those hostile generators, pumping out the correct level for whatever daily you're trying to hit.
Because you see those players, they're chasing and racing to the 39s or whatever, and it's just kind of, you're fighting each other. It's, but just like you said, you got to just, take the little ones to get your big ones. I get my dailies done pretty quick that way.
Be willing to take a hit for it.
Also, multiple ships. I used to literally run 5 or 6 ships in a much smaller, much lower level system, like for faction hunts. Like when I was like level 48 or 46, I can't remember. I would literally go to a level 39 system and I would run 5 ships. I would go an empty one or close to empty, and I would just literally click around to each ship and just sit at a spawn point and just sit there, click, kill, click, kill, click, kill. And I would get the faction event done in a quarter of the time, literally. Maybe 20, 25% of the time I would if I just took my strongest ship and went up to a level 46 or 48 system. And same could be said for any level. So sometimes you can run multiple ships and get it done a lot faster that way. For events.
Yeah,
Rep
faction hunt
grinding doesn't always work
brutal.
that way.
Faction hunt's getting brutal. Like the higher up you get, they really want you to kill a lot of ships.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's another thing too. The score they want you, or the amount of ships they want you to kill is a lot. So you end up either running multiple ships in a lower level system where you don't die as much, or you go straight to the level 49 capital system or a level 50 system and run PMC or whatever. But a lot of times that's not the fastest way to get it done. So if you're not mining or whatever and you've got extra ship slots, go to a lower level system, put some good crews on, and go to town with multiple ships.
Another good point. I do
So
that with dailies. I'll be doing swarms with one ship, killing hostiles with another ship, my other ships in org space, and just continually rotate.
flipping back and forth.
Yep. Especially as they're flying to kill something, switch over to another one.
I used to try and do that, but nowadays the game's so freaking glitchy that if I switch around so much, I end up crashing so much it ruins it for me.
Exactly.
Haven't hit that yet, but
I do love this server. At least most people on the server is I can send my Vidar, up into the Borg space and then go get something done, and then come back and do some grinding. and then set it down, go just get something done, and then come back and because of our ROE, my
Yeah,
ship
you're
is still there, and all my warp probes are still on the ship. I don't have to worry about losing it because I had to real life stuff to do.
Exactly.
And I think
I
it's
wish
really great.
I wish we could kill some of those Vidars because they just fill up the system.
No, I
Glad
guess
there wasn't a timer you could set on them.
I guess I'll just mention it real quick. This certainly isn't something I expect everybody to do, but one thing we're doing with the new ISO stuff is during ISO specific events, we've told our people not to hunt ISO. Of course, it's up to each individual team if they want to do that, but it's something we're doing at the moment.
I think it's definitely something worth considering. Treat it just like data now that they're doing ISO events.
Yeah, just because it's, especially with the Meridian, I know not everybody has it yet, but you'll soon find out that with the events, it's kind of like if you want to participate in the event, you have to use the Meridian, and it goes OPL in 2 seconds, and it's just ridiculously annoying to get hit for OPL every 5 seconds. So
It's another babysitting ship.
What is the max protected cargo? I think it's 1,200 at tier 9 or something like that at its base.
Let me check.
Did you
Let me
max
see
yours
if I
already?
can check. What's that?
You maxed yours already?
Yeah, I have one max. I did it with just grinding. I didn't buy any packs.
That's cool.
Well, it's easy to do.
Well, I mean, I bought the ship, and I bought the skin. I would highly, highly, highly recommend you get that skin because that extra refine, if you have extra loot, is awesome.
Now, fully explain that because I'm a little confused about how that proceeds. So you get the ship, right? Does that open anything up new?
The right
No. I mean, yes, it opens up your some research.
And it opens up that rice and refinery.
Right. Which is for research.
Zap says it's like Prime Refinery.
It's similar to Prime Refinery, not quite though.
Not quite. It's just it's giving you an extra level, but it costs a lot more. So Prime gives you basically for free gives you an extra level, right? So you know what Prime is, but
Well,
with
for the people that don't have
the
it,
ship skin,
basically you have for Prime Refinery you have 1 chest, 2 chests, 3 chests. When you get Prime Refinery, it becomes 2 chests, 3 chests, and 4 chests with no difference in cost. With the skin adding to the Isogen Refinery, the chest that you already have, whether it's 2 or 3 chests, depending on if you have the bonus refinery in the territory. Now you get a 4th chest, which is double what the 3rd chest is.
Wow.
Which is freaking awesome, especially for 1-star ISO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
because it's not the expense isn't all that much more.
And that's for all the ISOs. It does it.
Correct.
Yes.
So that
now,
that's worth
what we're seeing though is because of the Meridian and because of the skin and whatnot, we're seeing people that do OPL hunt do it 10 times more because now they want to max refine, and it's getting to the point where it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yes.
So, I don't know how it'll all shake out, but we'll see. Time will tell.
There's been a lot of anxiety and hostility between former friends lately.
Yeah.
Pretty much alliances that OPL hunt in our territory are the ones that the few OPL hunters we do have, that's where they go target.
Yeah, and which is a shame because if everybody spread it out a little bit, I think it would cause a lot less conflicts.
I've started doing what Herb does, and I started last night, and I'm just throwing out miners on ISO.
which is great. The problem is you can't control who comes by and hits it, and so
Oh
then
yeah,
you've got
I've
somebody
still
from
seen
an alliance
Bold and a few others.
that has all the ISO in the world, and they have a whole bunch of empty mines, yet they feel the need to come steal yours.
Yep,
So
that's
it's a
the
little
annoying
silly,
part.
but
Yeah, that's always been the thing that irked me. I've always said I'm happy to give my OPO isogen to people who don't have territory. People who do have it and just choose not to mine it, I just consider them douchebags.
So if you don't have a particular ISO and you need it, feel free to PM me or any higher level player in my alliance. They would be absolutely happy to let you hit them OPL anytime. Not a big deal. If you don't have that ISO, within reason. I mean, if you go messaging the person 3 times a day, it's probably not going to be received well. But if every once in a while you were super busy in real life and you didn't have an opportunity to mine at all, or you have no access to the ISO and you'd like to do a minimum refine from time to time, don't hesitate to reach out to somebody every once in a while. 9 times out of 10, I'll bet you that it's going to be very well received. A little PM and a little communication goes a really long way.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I know I had a couple of researches that required ISO 3 that came up in the away teams, and I think that's the only time I went OPO hunting in the past couple of years.
So I think if you have the Meridian and you're getting those daily refinery, the what's it called? The daily Vicen refinery. Just do a single pull from that. Don't do a double, because that gets expensive for your isogen. But you don't really need to go wasting officers on ISO on what little those away team mission assignments give. I think you
Yeah,
get
it's not the emulsion; it was just the raw. Which
Yeah.
is no big deal. I don't mind spending raw on it. It's when they want that emulsion, that's way too expensive for a little bit of resin, especially now that Horizon opens up the refinery for it. And there's very limited amount of research that you can get. There's 4 of them now.
they're probably
Yeah.
going to add more.
They get expensive as the levels go up. I'm excited about getting some more cargo space in my.
Well, that's not the only one that has cargo space research. There's the research. There's the away teams research tree. There's other parts on the territory research tree. And there was some galaxy research, I think.
Yes.
Yep, I've been hitting them all up, and then I hit a wall where I can't afford it right now. I've almost got my faction miner to 2 mil. That's been a goal of mine. I know you can get them up to 4 mil now with all the researches.
Congratulations. I'm struggling just to make 1 mil on mine, but I'm working on it.
Now, in speaking about some of those researches, one thing I was looking at today that I don't know how many people have looked at this, and I now know it's a level 35 block. But if you are 35 and up and you can do the Apex Rogue Notoriety research, it uses Apex tokens that you get during the Apex event, and that will increase your reputation that you're getting every day. That's a big increase. It will take days, weeks, months off of that reputation grinding.
Thank you for letting me know that, because I've had some people complaining that are around that level, and that might spur them on now.
That'll give them a 35% boost. And to give you an idea,
it takes 1,000. You have to save up.
1,000's not that hard to get, especially after that little mistake that Scopely did.
I'm 390 away from getting that done.
You'll probably get it in the next month or so. it's not a research that you can pay for. It's purely grinding research, and the difference is astounding. I mean, to give you an idea, the 3-day pull, like if you do a max pull for the reputation every 3 days, that gives someone at associate level 31,000. And if you have the research done, it'll give 40,000. So that 10,000 right there is a huge difference. On the single day, what was it? 4,000.
Yep.
Yeah, so for you, and be sure that you are getting to the end of that before you get to the 40s, because you want to unlock all that G4 research before you even hit that button for 40.
Yeah, and
Is
the
that
rogue
a rogue
the rogue research tree is a little bit twisted. Like you have to really look through it because there are prerequisites to certain efficiency researches that are really important.
Every tree
They
has
cost
that.
they cost mats, and you have to do them like for very first thing.
And I gotta
One thing
say,
that I'd recommend that we were talking about earlier privately with Cook Drift and myself, I'm at probably 75% of the way through Partner right now. When I first hit Partner, I was starting to see the efficiency researchers showing a rep requirement. I'd see stuff in 3.5 million, 4.5, 5.5 million. And at first, that stuff seemed really daunting. That Apex Rogue Rep that they were just talking about, especially when you hit Partner, is a really big deal. It's absolutely essential because I can clear, 1 million rep in 3 weeks, something like that. If I'm doing my double pulls on the 3-day pull and I'm hitting my security keys every day. So if you're properly positioned, those requirements are not nearly as daunting. And I promise you want to get those efficiencies done. Like I promise you that is one of the most important things you can do in your stretch from 33 to 39. What I was saying there, those efficiencies and how important they are. Drift and I both have our enterprises at T4, and he had listed in AC at one point how many G3 mats he needed, G3 gas he needed to be able to tier up to T5. And when he put out the numbers, I was like, holy crap, that doesn't sound right. And I looked at mine and I went, wow, I need half of what he just said. I needed 8K, to be able to clear out everything on my T4 enterprise, whereas the stuff he was looking at was, what was it, like 14K, 16K, something in that range.
Yeah.
And there's your difference. That's why your Stella is so important. That's why those researches are so important. He's literally paying twice as much as I am for the exact same thing. That's why you want to focus on that stuff. And the 3-star mats that are in front of those and some of the prerequisite researches, forget about it. That's an investment. You do it when they can pay you back. So whether there's a officer auction or there's a research event or something along those lines, do it when you get something back for it. Don't just throw them out there as soon as you got the mats or as soon as they're ready, because that way you maximize what you're spending. But really take those mats you were going to put in your ship at 35. A lot of those are better used by hitting those efficiencies and push to 49 so that you can get better rewards, but B, most importantly, the better efficiencies, because we all know one of the toughest things to do in your 30s is grind out those G3 mats, especially as the ships get bigger. So the amount of mats that I've saved by going all the way up to 39 and then backfilling, I've saved myself at least a year worth of gameplay because I don't have to grind 16K G3 gas to tier up my enterprise to T5. I only have to grind 8. A far less daunting number when you really break it all down at 2K per module, I think is what I'm at, give or take. So really, that's where you want to be, and that's why that rogue rep and rogue research is so important, is to be able to unlock those things.
And if they
Basically, I think what he's just getting at is just really concentrating on those researches. Like my plan with the enterprise is not to touch a module until I get a couple levels up and get some of that research done.
Can someone else
Is-
explain about the what
Yeah.
that rebate is?
So there's certain researches, I think it's in the Galaxy research tree, that affects your efficiency. And I could be wrong, but I think it's those faction ones. That it doesn't actually show you what you're saving. Instead, you have to go and get over a threshold, and it gives you a rebate back of whatever it is that you actually saved.
Essentially, it's not showing you the correct number, and once you click the button, it won't actually take all of it that it's saying it's going to. Is essentially what it is,
Gotcha.
and it's just scope. It's a Scopely fuck up, is what it is.
Yeah, but
Okay.
Scopely also said that they won't fix it. They like it that way.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the level 39 research.
No, that's the faction research. You're already looking at that research. You've gotten it since you were level 20, I think.
Oh,
There's-
is
A
that
lot
really?
of people
You
don't
got
even
to.
realize it's happening. It's because of the efficiency research is actually dropping the price of some of the other researches, but it's not showing that change, right? So you go and you click on the research thinking it's one price and it's actually supposed to be less. So they're just giving it back to you after you click the button. It's ridiculous.
Oh.
At least
So
that's
it's
how
like-
I
noticed it in
understand
the,
it.
It's
I've
like
noticed
the-
it in the TC researches too. I did 2 of the ship efficiency researches and watched the modules on my auger move not even a little bit.
Right.
Oh,
But
really?
once you actually click on it, like if you
Right.
do the research or do the upgrade to your ship or whatever, it just actually won't take all the resources.
Yeah, basically you have change left over when once you do it. The bullshit part is that you still have to reach the number it shows you before you can click on it. This is the part that irritates the hell out.
Correct. Yeah.
But yeah, that's
I
you
mean-
do have it left over.
Just imagine having to get, what is it, like 5,000 rare ore to max your auger, and you go and click the button after you finally got that 5,000, only to find out you only need like 3,500.
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating.
You know, I love the efficiency research I just did. Is I'm doing the math on getting my auger up to the next tier, and what was it? I can actually look at it right now.
You were
So
about 1,000.
before I needed like 4,500 uncommon ore, and it dropped down to like 42. But it's 4,234 now that I need. And by the end of the arc, I'll have it. So then I'll have a tier 6 auger, and it'll be awesome.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I don't think I could have got it. Of
Yeah.
course, Ops 36, they hide that behind a whole bunch of uncommon ore too. So
Remember, the name of the game is Research and Officers. It's all about the research and the officers. Those are the 2 things that stick by you forever. Ships come and go. Buildings come and go. Research and officers, those are going to be there forever.
you literally put them in the scrapyard. Isn't it absolutely nuts?
Yeah,
We
I
just
know.
do all
I've
this
got-
effort.
Tell me
It's
about
all-
it. I've got like 3 enterprises, 2 augers, 4 D4s. I'm
Jeez.
scrapping them all.
How many of them are max?
At the moment, the augers are max, the enterprises are max. Wait, what do I have right now?
See,
It's
y'all
ridiculous.
thought I was full of shit when I told you this.
Here,
I
hang
think
on.
Andy and DT were talking to me one day after the podcast, and he brought this up, and I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was.
I thought I had first world problems. Damn.
I've got like, I wish I could scrap these freaking jellies because now I'm sitting on like 6 of them.
Oh
They
my
got 9
goodness.
of them.
God damn it.
And then, yeah, so I've got 2 max enterprises. One of, they're both 7 million. And then this is at home, but 6 million on one of the enterprises, so it's not fully maxed. Max D4. And then I've got a few more D4s that I'm working on, another auger that I'm working on. And I've just scrapped 2 augers already. Another enterprise I'm working on. So what is
So
that?
Tam is asking about
That's
battle
4
report.
enterprises. What's that?
Poor Handy.
I know, 4.
Tam is asking about battle reports. We didn't get too into that, and we're running low on time. Is there anything
Tiger,
else people want to say?
I don't know, Tiger, do you want to go more into detail about how to read battle reports for a layman?
What have we covered already? Catch me up there, and then I can pick it up.
I don't think we've covered anything on the battle reports.
Not
No,
really.
we just talked about what we were looking at on them.
Yeah, like mitigation, piercing.
And then proceeded to
Riker.
be impressed.
I mean, a lot to battle reports is just
math.
yeah, but you also there's a few key things that I look at personally. Mainly how many rounds. So, like for example, I think how many rounds is really important because there's certain skills, certain officer skills that work a lot better for long fights, and then there's certain officer skills that get it done really fast and come in real strong at the beginning. So when you see like an officer skill that says in round 1 it does this, well, if it's only a 3-round battle, I mean, that's 30% of the fight right there. So that could be a really big deal. But if you're in a fight that's 50 rounds long, then now that ability sucks, right? So that's one thing I use the battle log for to look at, is how long some of these fights go. You know, and that
Khan is a great example of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And DCS too. DCS is
so
is
stacking
effective.
battles, like officers that do stacking effects that keep getting more and more powerful as the fight goes on, work great in a fight that lasts 100 rounds. Like some of these little ship battles. Remember, you had the PvP events with little ships.
Yep.
I mean, these fights would go 100 rounds 3 times in a row. So the people that were winning were using the skills that kept stacking on top of each other every round. But then, anyway, so that's one thing I look at when I'm looking at battle logs. I'm sure you guys have a lot more of the detailed math kind of stuff, but that's just a little quick tip.
This is definitely something great for Mistaken or Darius. I tend to try and calculate the math sometimes, depending on how much I look into it.
So one of the things that I use battle reports for religiously, and my my method changes from ship to ship based on what I'm trying to get out of it. But that's the best way that I can tell how effective my officer crews really are, and how much backline stats I really need to add in, or what officer crews have ceased to become effective. The best example I can give for that is, let's say, exchange armadas or armadas in general. A lot of people will tell you that 5 Kirk Spock, 5 Kirk Spock. Well, there's a point at which Kirk and Spock are completely superfluous, because if you're frequently finishing armadas with full shield health in a longer fight, a 30, 40, 50 round fight, then chances are your shield health and mitigation may not require you to run Kirk Spock. So being able to go through the math on the battle report, how much damage is hitting you, how much damage is mitigated at the onset, how much damage is going to your shield, and at what rate are you regenerating that shield. Depending on the size of the target, I may find that until I'm really hitting the top end of my reach, I may not have to run Kirk and Spock. I may not care about that much shield. So when I look at those numbers, the way that I break that down, or the way any player can break that down, you first have in the battle report a raw damage set that is dealt to you or dealt by you. So that's your initial number in your column. For your ships, it's on the left side on enemies or hostiles, it's on the right side. And they'll list how much damage popped out of their weapon before it considers your numbers at all. Your mitigation stats are what determines how much damage goes away in the first line on the opposite side of the column. So if something hits me for 500K, right, I have my stats are lined up to give me 50% mitigation. I can see that by watching the first number at the top is halved. Okay, so ship mitigates 250K. And then your shields have a base mitigation that they soak as long as they're still active, and the remainder goes to your hull. Those numbers are all determined by your defensive values, armor, dodge, and shield deflection versus the attacker's offensive stats, armor piercing, shield penetration, or accuracy. However high you are in comparison to those or low determines how much your ship is going to mitigate, or in turn, how much their ship is going to penetrate. You can hit a ceiling for those numbers. If I remember correctly, it's like 72.5%, 73%, something in that range is both your max penetration value and your max mitigation value. So if you break down those numbers by basically deconstructing the raw damage that the target hits you with, and then kind of factoring out what percentage is represented in the three numbers they give me on the opposite side, I can determine what percentage I'm mitigating. That becomes important to determine whether or not you really need to beef up your mitigation or not. If I put 5 on the bridge and I have no synergy and I'm still mitigating 72% of the damage that's hitting me from the raw stack, I don't need any extra synergy. It does me absolutely no good. I've already hit my mitigation max. You can't tell that unless you're looking at the battle report and kind of breaking down the math a little bit. I will tell you that I don't break out the abacus or the calculator or anything like that. I do most of my numbers in kind of a rough and quick manner, unless I'm really trying to take a deep dive. But for the most part, I can sit there and say that in most armadas I find myself in, the mitigation that I get from having 6 on the bridge, it doesn't matter. I'm already at max for a lot of these. And 6 is only there because he increases my penetration values, every round. But in some armadas, I really do need that extra 600%. And that's a good marker for me to be able to determine what kind of crew I need to use at what power level, and what part of my stat sheet I need to focus on. Do I need to worry more about staying alive in this fight, or do I need to worry about being able to penetrate quickly? And those are kind of experience-driven things, because depending on the armada type, I kind of already know I'm going to an exchange armada. My Stella is high enough in comparison to the targets we hit and what everybody else is running that I don't really need to do a whole lot of mitigation. I really don't. I've got that all in my background research and everything, and my Stella is going to carry its own weight. So my benefit to the armada team is to go high damage penetration and try and kill that thing as fast as possible, because this is only going to be a 15, 20 round fight, unless it's something that's a really high-end target for our team.
Well, you also want to keep in mind damage too on the flip side of that. So if you know you're in an armada that's going to die quick because of who's around you, you're not going to get a whole lot of loot if you're running something like Kirk and Spock. I mean, you just basically joined the armada, stayed alive, took a couple blows, and didn't do any damage at all. So therefore, you're not getting any loot. So you may want to instead do something that increases your damage, as much as possible, because that's what's going to dictate how much loot you get.
In a lot of cases, absolutely. The aside that I would give to that, though, is there's a fine line between ramping my damage to increase my loot and staying alive longer so that my overall damage is actually higher. I've seen a lot of times where a damage ramp crew that gets blown out in 10 or 15 rounds of a 30-round fight, your damage contribution is actually still smaller than if you had crewed for sustainability and lasted 20, 25 rounds. In some cases, you end up ahead, still playing defense, but if in a lot of cases, it is still better to go damage. So it's kind of a fine line based on your personal research and where your officers are at as to whether or not additional rounds or additional damage is really going to come out to be the better result. But it is something you definitely have to pay attention to and balance, because sometimes the right answer is different, right? Some armadas I might end up doing more damage because I live 5 extra rounds. Some armadas I might get a better loot share because I went all in on my damage and penetration, and I didn't last as long as I could have, but I threw a lot of violence in the time that I was there, and so I end up pulling more loot. And that's where I say it's kind of an experience-driven thing. And that experience comes from reading those battle reports, from seeing how the damage breaks down, seeing what abilities are triggering and how often they're triggering, and what efficacy they're bringing to the fight. One other thing I want to point out there, to kind of keep going with that, is a lot of people have brought up the fact that they don't see an officer triggering when they do go into the battle reports. So I want to touch on the fact that the battle report has a lot of things that it doesn't show you in obvious fashion. But if you go into the lines and you break down the math, you can see that things are still happening. What I'm talking about when I say that is, if multiple people are running Kirk and Spock on their bridge, the battle report's only going to show you one team. Even though 4 Spock may have triggered when 4 Kirk went off and threw morale up on that ship, you're only going to see one player's Kirk, one player's Spock. That doesn't mean that your Spock didn't trigger. It just means that the battle report's only listing, and I'm not really sure how it determines this. Most of the time, it seems like whoever the highest tier officer is the one that gets listed. But sometimes it seems to default to the Armada leader if they have, redundancy in their crews. So if you have, 3-4 guys running Kirk Spock, if I have Kirk at 80% and Spock is maxed, and everybody else has, Kirk at 75% and Spock is one tier lower, you're only ever going to see mine trigger until I die or my Kirk doesn't go off and somebody else does. And this applies to almost all of the officers that you'll see. So there are some ways in which the battle report will fool you if you're just giving it a surface scan, because you'll see like, hey, VR's Giorgio went off, but Tiger's didn't. Well, that's because VR has Giorgio at 60% and Tiger is, poor and has, level 5 Giorgio, because disco poles hate me. But damn, it's my sorrow good. But those are the kind of things that sometimes will take players away from crews that were suggested to them because it seems like it's not working. But if I dive into it and I look at that Kirk Spock example, I can see where my shield health got depleted in a given round, and then I go another round or two later and I see, oh look, I've got shield again. It never actually said my Spock went off. It was going off of Cook's Spock as the Armada leader, let's say. But my Spock is still doing his work in the background. So that's important to note, because I've had a couple of times where people are like, wow, this doesn't really seem to work for me, until we point out to them like, hey, no, it's still going on in the background. You just got to know what to look for. You have to look a little harder to make sure that those things are actually triggered.
Yeah, which is a little tough because you want to know like what rounds you had morale hit, so you can compare it to when rounds that you didn't have morale. So it's a little. I wish Scopely would change that. If they could add little like icons or something to everyone ship.
That would be nice.
Yeah,
There is
like,
a lot to be desired still in the battle reports, but I'll also say that there was a time, early on in the game where we didn't even have battle reports. And there was also a time where, like, when they first launched, there was much less information than there is now. So fingers crossed they'll continue to improve that mechanic. But yeah, that is definitely frustrating, because there's some stuff that, even those of us who are very well versed in reading them, there's a lot I wish I could see that I just can't. I don't know what the actual impact is, or there's not enough information there to really break down what I want to know. But that having been said, they're still they're a vital tool now that you have them, because it's the only way you can see whether or not what you are trying is really working.
Well, the best thing to do for that is run solo armadas on smaller targets.
Yes.
If you want to see if particular skills are working and how they're working, in regards to just you, without anything else affecting it. Just run smaller solo armadas.
That is absolutely the best method, to be able to isolate variables and stuff like that, to be able to tell, is this really working the way that it seems, or is this effective?
Right,
The
because
other way that you
your numbers can be skewed by other people's skills as well, like burning and hull breach and all these other things can skew the numbers.
Oh man, especially the level of the leader's ACC. That's
Right.
a big one. That's a big
Absolutely.
one.
I mean,
someone else told
I've
me-
seen smaller guys running armadas, and the big guys will come and join, and we fail because their ACC's at 37 and ours is at 50. Well, that's a big
Oh, yeah.
difference.
It's a massive group
separatists
damage
aren't bad
difference.
to hit either.
So
What
that
was that?
affects everybody's numbers then.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Everybody's numbers is going to go off the leader's ACC level.
Yeah, you'll see a substantial difference between, say, a 33 runs a 5-seater, and then a 30, six seats kicks in at 39. So let's say a 38 runs that same exact 5-seater with the exact same ships and crews, and you will notice a substantial difference in the result. Whereas the 33 might have the whole armada fall flat on their face, the 38 with that difference in group damage bonus, that could be a successful armada by comparison.
Just basically for each level you go down, you want to add that percentage in power to it to be successful. So if you know that a level 40 you need 20%, 25% of the power to beat the armada, in comparison to the armada's power, just as a rough guide. If somebody 5 levels lower, well, you may want to add 10% to that number to make sure you're safe or something like that. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but something along there.
I believe it adds like 2% per level. I think like if you're 35, you have to add 70% power. I think is the numbers.
Right.
The best rule of thumb that I've been able to kind of develop here is that, like, when you're looking at 4 to 5 seat armadas, having roughly 40, maybe 45% of the armada power is ideal. When you get to the 35 plus range and into the 6-seat armadas, we've really been seeing that 30 to 35% of the power is generally sufficient. But that's a hard and fast rule, and is potentially very inaccurate. So I wouldn't take that as biblical or anything. But it's at least a place to start.
Right.
If you're properly crewed and everything.
Which is sometimes a very big assumption.
Well, I've seen crazy stuff before where I started an armada in exchange, and it was just me and Smooth, for example, on a level 40 rare, and we win. And then, and then somebody else runs the armada, and it's me and Smooth and OC, and we lose on the same rare. Like, it's just sometimes it happens.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, and exchange
Especially
is
with the
kind of
Stellas. The Stellas the exchange armadas are very hard to read as far as power level and what's going to work and what isn't. Really, really hard.
Oh man, they are. The thing that you can't see, and the reason that they're so hard for everybody listening there, is that there are background bonuses that occur when your Stella is in exchange space, and there's really no good way to tell who has what. Like we've kind of tried to develop a bit of a M number system, amongst our alliance, to say that, okay, if your M number is this, then I feel pretty confident we can do this. But it's such an inexact science, because there's more going on in the background for the exchange armadas than there is for anything else, because your Stella gets additional bonuses just because it's in exchange space, or just because it's going after an exchange target, in addition to your personal researches and stuff like that would affect any ship. And it really skews the numbers. I mean, it is so hard. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Well, we're hitting the time here, so I want to close this out, but we can keep chatting afterwards. Thank you guys for coming, really. Tiger, really appreciate you coming and laying this stuff out. Handy, Jolly and Sid, Danny, I really appreciate you coming, Cook. I know you're sick. You haven't talked much this time, but he does a lot of help putting this out. So see you guys next week.
If I
Thank
could,
you very
real quick
much,
before
everyone.
we go,
Later,
before we go real quick, I just want to throw a big shout out to Handy because, man, I see you in all kinds of podcasts and all kinds of group chats and different alliances and everything. And the effort you're putting in to help grow the server outside of your team is singular. And to be honest with you, I think it's a lot of the reason why other teams like ours are trying to do this sort of thing. So as you know, as much as I can speak on behalf of the server, dude, thank you for everything you do because it's invaluable and not many people would take the time that you take to spread your knowledge and experience, and it's definitely appreciated. And just thank you for being the player that you are and being the guy that you are, and helping everybody out here, man. It's really appreciated. Thank you much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's very humbling. Thank you. I try my best.
You
You
do
do
a
a great job.
magnificent job, man.